Hello my fellow gnomes, welcome to episode 7 of Dead Rails. We already have our environment stuff with our rocks and our cactuses and such like, but today we're going to add some buildings alongside the track, which should make for some more interesting gameplay. As a reminder, if you want to get access to videos early and the project files, that's all available at gnomecode.com. But let's just get into today's video. So heading into our environment module, and when we have this add next, we do some land, we do some decoration. Well, let's say we wanted to add in a building as well. So let's just temporarily, we're just going to add in a single part. We're going to add some models later on. And we can think of this as like a train platform. Okay, so the size of this is going to be 15 studs wide, 5 studs high, and then 100 studs long, so it's the whole length of a track section. Make sure it's anchored. We'll make the material equal to a wood planks, and we should probably give it a color as well, something brown. There we go. Now we need to choose which side of the track to place it on using these 1-1 system. In fact, I might even make that into a little variable here. Directions, and we'll just move that up like that, and so now this can go through the directions table and we can reuse it again. So the building side we're going to place this on is a random value from the directions table, math.random 2, because we want a random number between 1 and 2, so one of these two. And then the x offset for this new part, pretty similar. Again, we have to take the size of the track, and then we want to divide it by 2, and then we want to also add on the size of our platform. So platform.size.x, divide that by 2, wrap all of this inside brackets, and then multiply it by whatever building side we're on. So then the p.cframe is equal to the position of the track, primary part.cframe, offset by a new cframe, using our x offset value. For the y, I need to raise this thing off the floor. So that's going to be p.size.y divided by 2, and then 0 on the z offset. And finally, let's just add this new platform into the workspace. Well, actually, we'll put it inside of this folder. So that's a quick test. If we click play, what we should now see is we're going to have our track sort of spammed with all of these platforms. So we've got one on the left, then one on the right. As we generate the next piece, we're going to get one on the left this time. And obviously we don't really want this, but we can see we're generating these platforms directly next to our track, which is pretty cool. And if we wanted to maybe not have it be every single time, we could create something like building interval, make this equal to 5, and then we can check when we're adding the platform if the track number, if it divides by the building interval cleanly, 0 with no remainder, then we will add 1 in. So let's just generate a few more tracks to start with. Let's make the buffer equal to 5. And so now when I spawn in, I should see we've got 1 in the very distance, and I will need to drive forward a little bit. And obviously this stuff will eventually despawn behind us, but we'll keep generating more tracks, and then in 5 tracks time, we'll get the next one. There we go. Cool. So obviously we don't want to just have single parts. That's pretty boring. Let's have some actual buildings. So here is one I made earlier, a station building. You can see I've kind of kept the platform thing, but we've made it into a little building. I think this looks pretty cool and kind of keeping to the style of the buildings we see in Dead Rails as well. So I don't want this to be in the workspace. Well, I suppose you could have it as like a starter area when you spawn in. But we want to put it in the assets folder in server storage. So we got the decorations subfolder, and now I'm going to have a building subfolder, and let's move our station into that subfolder. Let's hop back into our environment script, and we can kind of take all of this stuff out now, cut that rather than delete it, create a new function called spawn building. It's just nicer to separate this out sometimes. Paste that in. And spawn building is going to expect the name of the building we want, the track piece that we're going to offset from, the side of the track we want to be on, and then also the parent. So track side, that's the building side basically. Yeah, let's call that building side actually. So which side of the track? Still the same thing. We can remove this line here, delete all this stuff to do with parts, and we're going to do a similar thing to the track decoration, right? So copy and paste that in here. But this time, instead of searching the decoration folder, we need to search the building folder, and then we can clone the asset if it exists, and we'll say the new build is equal to a copy of the asset. And then rather than getting p.size, we want new build dot primary part.size. So make sure your building does have a primary part. And then let's make this into a local variable. Local C-frame equals that. And again, we'll move p, so it's new build.primary part, like so. And then we need to think about what side of the track is, what the building side is. Because if that is -1, then we actually need to flip the whole thing around. So we'll say C-frame times equals, and we'll construct a new angle and rotate it round 180 degrees so it's still facing the track. Then new build, pivot to our C-frame value. And finally, make sure that we add the new build dot parent to the parent that we've been given by the function. So let's make sure we're calling this function correctly. Inside of here, spawn building. I'm just going to manually type station, but if you want, you could do a similar system with different randomization stuff like we did here. We've already got the track piece. The building side, well, that was just directions, math.random2, and the parent is simply that folder. So if we hit play now, we're going to see, there we go. If we drive up to it, and here is our station building. We can pull up alongside it and get in and have a look. Admittedly, there's not too much in here. One thing we might want to do to make sure that our decoration stuff can't collide with this is we want to apply a rule so that we don't generate any decor. So let's this direction. Let's have a global building side, set that equal to whichever side we got. We'll send that to the function. But then when we're doing the decoration stuff down here, we can do a little check where we say if that building side we generated, or actually let's change this. So initially this is going to be equal to nil, and then inside of here, so if we're actually generating a building, then we set it. And if we have a building side and that building side is equal to the X direction, then we will continue on and ignore it. So it won't generate any decoration on the same side as we're placing the building. Cool. So hopefully that will stop us getting any rocks generating inside the building. So we've got a building, but with nothing that we can really do with it. So let's place some items inside of our building now so we can interact, maybe get some fuel for our train and such like. So if I put my station back into the workspace for a moment, and inside of the station building, I'm going to add in a new folder. We're going to call this item spawns. And all I'm going to do is add some parts into that item spawns folder. So brand new part, whoops. And we can position this wherever we like, wherever you think you might like to generate an item. So make a few duplicates of these, maybe one on each side of the platform, maybe some inside the building, a few over here, like so, and maybe one down here or even on the outside. So there we go, we've got some spawns now. We'll move this station back into the building folder, and then in our environment script, when we spawn the building, we're going to need to generate some items as well. So we'll add in a function called spawn item, which will take the name that you want to spawn, and then also the spawn part, so one of those that we just created, and we're going to search through to find the item to place there. So let's add another subfolder inside of the assets, call this item. Now, previously we created this gold bar, this piece of coal, and this pottery. Now, these are all just static parts. You could add something in a bit cooler for these, but for now, we're just going to add these parts, and I'm going to drag them into the item folder so they're easy to reference. And I'm going to copy this same logic from the spawn building, whereas this time we're going to search the item folder. If it doesn't exist, then ignore it, but otherwise, create a copy of it. So asset, clone it, put that new item. I'm going to use .cframe because mine are just parts. If yours are a model, then you're going to need to use pivot2, but we're going to put it in the same position as the spawn part. Add the item into, well, we could put it in the workspace, or I might add a little folder to keep things organized called items, so it can go inside of workspace.items. And then once I've done, let's just destroy the spawn part as we don't need it anymore. So that would be spawning a single item, but we've got multiple spawn parts. So we're going to have a sort of wrapper function for this called generate items. And we're going to decide whether we want to spawn items and how many. Because not all buildings in your game necessarily are going to have item spawn folders, maybe. So let's do a check for some locations. We'll take the building. This needs to be a parameter of the function. And let's do find first child. Find if there is anything called item spawns, because if they're not, then we can't generate any items, that's for sure. So just exit out of the function. But otherwise, we're going to loop through all of them. So locations, get the children, and create a little loop. And we're going to create some very rudimentary sort of randomization logic again. Math.random between 1 and 20. And let's say if the number equals 20 exactly, then we'll spawn in a gold bar. So call the spawn item function. The name of the item is gold bar. That's what I've called it down here. In fact, I've got a capital B, so make sure that we make that a capital B, and we need to provide the spawn part. Else, if maybe the number is greater than 10, so it's not 20, but it's somewhere between 11 and 19, then let's just spawn in some pottery, right? That's our junk item that we created. And else, if the R number that we generated, if that's less than 5, then let's spawn in some coal. Okay, so you can make these rules whatever you like, but that's what we're going to do. And then finally, if it's none of those, then let's just delete the spawn part so that it's not hanging around. We will destroy it. And so whenever we spawn a building in and we add it into the workspace, well, just before, in fact, we will just generate some items providing the new build. So if I click play, haven't got any errors. And if I look inside of my items folder in the workspace, I can already see some coal and pottery has generated. And if I take the train down to the first station, here we are. I can already see those lovely blue pottery parts. There they are. If we can stop here. And if I want, I could drag these around. They don't really do much. And let's look, where is there some coal? Here's some coal. I can pick that up and let's place it inside of the train. So we can see we're missing a bit of fuel. We can pick it up and there we go. Paste it in. We're fueled up and we can keep going on our adventure and on to the next station. So that's about it for this episode. If you want to get the project files and the scripts, you can get them over at gnomecoder.com for Academy members and maybe get access to the videos early. But that's everything for this video. So thank you very much for watching and I'll see you all in the next episode. Goodbye.